Hey everybody, it's Mike, and welcome to Chip Damage. And you all know I love me some fighting games. If you've seen any of my videos on this channel, particularly my collecting videos or my discussion videos, my unboxings, you'll notice a lot of fighting game talk. Yeah. Though I can never truly say what my favorite genre of video game is, fighting games is probably the one that has connected me with the most amount of people, the one I've had the most fun with amongst friends. And that's kind of how it's been for my entire life. Like ever since I got a Genesis as a kid, growing up playing Mortal Kombat and Street Fighter, and then being the only kid in my neighborhood to have a Dreamcast and having the neighborhood kids cycle through to play Marvel vs. Capcom 2. Fighting games have been a tremendous part of my life. And recently, it's been fantastic as a fighting game fan. It's almost been an embarrassment of riches where there has been too much to play if you enjoy multiple fighting games, such as I do. But there's some weirdness there, as there is with every genre in all games. There is always, a little bit of a caveat with every golden or gilded age, as you were. And I just kind of want to take this opportunity to talk about what's good, what's not so good, what to look forward to, the mistakes of the past, and hopefully some changes that we see in the future of this genre that I love so much. So without further ado, if you like this video, if you like what you're about to see or my prior videos, do the YouTube stuff, the like, subscribe, and we'll carry on, shall we? So yeah, like I said, we kind of are in not even a golden age of fighting games. I'd say we're in a platinum age. I'd say that most people agree that 1991, with the release of Street Fighter 2 in arcades, was kind of like the fighting game boom. Like that's as big as it ever was, maybe the biggest it'll ever be, where like, Street Fighter 2 took over arcades. It's like the third highest selling game on the Super Nintendo. Then Mortal Kombat came out, and that was massive with movies and cartoons and what have you. And then, Tekken 1 and Virtua Fighter. Like the early 90s were the genesis and the explosion of fighting games. And they would always have a major presence in video game consoles going forward. But it would get a huge boon, as it were, in around 2009, 2008, with the release of Street Fighter 4, which was kind of the beginning of the online console fighting game space. Like online gaming had reached a place where it was common to have a good connection or decent connection to play online. So you just didn't have to play with kids in the neighborhood or people in the arcades. Kind of, the beginning of the downfall of arcades because you didn't need to leave your home to play. But Street Fighter 4 ushered in other games like the revival of Mortal Kombat, Marvel vs. Capcom 3, and that age, like kind of looking back at it, a lot came out real fast. You had like the JoJo's Bizarre Adventure game remaster, you had the Darkstalkers Resurrection remaster, Third Strike Online edition, all fantastic titles, but that was kind of only a 2 or 3 year period, and then it would start to kind of crest and then go downwards with releases like Street Fighter Cross Tekken, which is a fine game, but it wasn't openly accepted amongst players, casual and competitive. And we Street Fighter V had the worst launch in one of the worst launches, not just in fighting game history, but in video game history in 2016. And, things were kind of sparse thereafter. However, recently in the 2020s, there's been, like I said earlier, an embarrassment of riches. Every company has been putting out, that has been known to put out fighting games, has been putting out mostly bangers at a steady clip, and it's been great. But, there are some problems, and that is kind of what I want to be talking about going forward. Kind of how I view all this current platinum age, if there was like 2 golden ages before, and my kind of perspective on it, because there's a lot of different perspectives, and I find that there's not a lot of players out there who play multiple fighting games and can both view it through competitive and casual lenses. And I would like to kind of throw my 2 cents in there as someone who kind of just loves video games as an art, but particularly loves everything, including artistic and competitive aspects of fighting games. So what am I in terms of that? So if you don't know, there is something called the FGC out there, the fighting game community. And if you've ever been online and looked at a comment section of a fighting game video or been to a website like, Event Hubs or Fighters Generation, that you will have a pretty vocal and vitriolic comment section under all of that. And that usually comes from the fighting game community. What the fighting game community is kind of how they fancy themselves, and I pseudo consider myself part of this, is like the hardcore players, right? People who compete, travel to compete, go online, play to win, as it were, and go to tournaments, whether they be online or in person. They follow the development history of the games. They know the ins and outs of the mechanics. They're the first ones to decry we need a balance patch, what have you. And this is a beautiful and fantastic community. Kind of like vocal mouthpieces of it being like Maximilian Dude, one of the biggest fighting game YouTuber, the biggest fighting game YouTuber, and Justin Wong, one of the most famous fighting game competitive players. And they're fantastic because they kind of form the spine of fighting game fans in a lot of ways. They're very knowledgeable. They know what they want. And unfortunately, that does come with a downside. A lot of these players, being super competitive, view fighting games as a sport. And I don't think that's the correct way to view it. And if you watch a lot of these, they will very rarely talk about what they would consider casual appeals of the game, whether that be character design, character roster size, music, backgrounds. And like, there's no mention of that. They see characters, a lot of them, not all of them, will see characters as functions. Like Ryu isn't the Japanese like wandering fighter with ki powers. No, he is the the one who can has a decent close-up game but better range, and his priority is that like if he throws a punch the same time as Ken, he'll win this. And of course, if you want to win and you want to compete, you need to know these details. However, with that, it kind of loses the fun of the game, like the beauty of it as a video game, instead of just a tool to be ass, where characters and all that, like they are just tools, and all that side on the stuff, it doesn't matter. It's tertiary. It's window dressing. And I just don't like that sentiment, because video games, yes, of course, are products to be sold, but they are also pieces of art in which you are supposed to have fun with, right? And I don't particularly completely prescribe to the idea that fighting games, just because of their ultra competitive nature can't be seen as regular video games or works of art, right? And gameplay comes into that. Of course, you want a good playing game at the end of the day, but you know what? Here's something that may shock you. Go on any video game, fighting game, whether it be Xbox, PlayStation, or Steam, and find one with a trophy or achievement that says has played one ranked match. They will almost always be under 10% achieved. And that is because though you wouldn't be able to tell by comment sections and commentators and like how vocal the community is, the fighting game community, the competitive scene, which is what I'll call them for the remainder of this to kind of make it less confusing, is under 10% of the purchasers of fighting video games. Here's an example. EVO, the largest fighting game pretty much competition tournament in the world, held in Las Vegas every year. I went myself in 2024. Highly recommend it. Let's say that, and this is a high number, Street Fighter 6, which is the most dominant fighting game right now, had 10,000 players, right? And that's high. It's usually not that high, but let's just say it had 10,000. And let's say that's only 10% of the entire fighting game community, right? Let's say it's like 100, there's 100,000 competitive Street Fighter players, and that is way too high, but let's just say that's 100, what it is. There are over 6.5 million copies of that game sold. So I can't do that percentage in my head at the moment, but obviously a very, very small percentage of 100,000 compared to the 6.5 million people who just buy it and play it for fun because they like the characters, they like the music, so on and so forth. So there's like a weird imbalance with the vocality, with the dialogue of fighting games on the internet, where the ones that are complaining the most, the ones who are the most adamant, are actually like fairly small, and most people who most people don't care about the tight balance and the certain nuances, though they should be there. But just if you were unsure, though the fighting game community sees themselves as the leaders and in many ways the mouthpiece of the community, they are a very small percentage of it. And that may ruffle some feathers, but that's just the numbers of this, right? All 6.5 million of those people who bought Street Fighter 6 are not at tournaments. A very, very small percentage of them are. So where do I find myself? Where do I find myself in this as we go through this discussion, just so you see where I am coming from? I love fighting games, and I consider myself, I like going on ranked and casual matches for all fighting games. And I'm good enough to know that I am not good. You know what I mean? I fully understand mechanics. I fully embrace them and try to learn them with every new fighting game, but I never have the attention span or really the want to stick with one fighting game for more, like competitively, like ranked, for more than a couple months, because I want to move on to the next game. You guys know my collection, you know how much I love this art form. And that's generally not what most competitive players do. They pick one game and they play it for 5 years and they don't play anything else. And I just can't do that. But since most fighting games have something called legacy skill, where if you're used to playing fighting games, a lot of that skill transfers over, especially in Japanese games, all kind of have the skeleton of Street Fighter. I am decent enough to know that I can beat someone who is just picking up the controller for the first time, but I am not beating someone who's competing in a tournament. So I kind of find myself in the middle. Because while I love nuances and a game needs to feel good, a game needs to have new mechanics and good, solid, fundamental mechanics in order to succeed. But one of the things I love the most about fighting games are the characters. Fighting games are just their characters. There's no exploration. There's nothing like that, like in an open world game. Like, they are characters set on like tiny stages. So character designs, which lead me to say, like, I won't pick a character because they have they will win. They are the top tier characters. No, like, oh, they look cool and or have a fighting style that looks interesting. And then I go from there. And I think that's the best way to actually do it if you want to have fun with a video game. If you're trying to decide, like, oh, that character is cool and or that fighting style looks cool, and go from there. And I really appreciate, and fighting games have a rich history of character designs just being extravagant. They have to grip you, especially back in the arcade games. Characters had to look cool and be nuanced and be loud and have bombastic movements. Look at Mortal Kombat, pretty much like selling it on like their radical character designs and violence, right? It needs to be gripping. Music, especially in the Japanese video game scenes, like there's an entire legacy of how amazing fighting game music it is, because you're going to be playing this game a lot. You're going to be replaying the games a lot. So they want to make sure that you have a bump in tune so you kind of like don't get bored with that area. And speaking of various stage designs, I love fighting game stages, whether they're interactive or not. Just like, if you go back, there is such a rich history of beautiful art, moving and static, of fighting games. They can have tons of characters. They can tell you about the characters from which that they're associated with, like, Chun-Li's Chinese Street in Street Fighter 2, or the Pit in Mortal Kombat. Like, there's a story to be told. Tekken stages, Virtual Fighter stages, but particularly Capcom stages, that like stages keep you visually interested, especially if there's a number of them, because like I said, you will be doing the same actions a lot, but they could also tell the story of the game, along with the character designs. As sequels go on, I love seeing character designs evolve, and you can immediately tell kind of, if you're following the story, where that character is. If they're getting older, their clothing has changed, their styles have changed. That is the unique way that fighting games portray their story. And while I will never go to a fighting game for its story per se, the character development, the character progression, I really should say, and the character attitudes, these big flamboyant characters, are a huge draw for me. And that is my initial draw. And when I get into it, those movements, that gameplay, those nuances, that's what's going to keep me there, right? But so that's where I kind of find myself in the middle. And and I think those are the things that make a good fighting game. Things that make a good fighting game, just quickly, are a good roster of unique characters with good aesthetics, that's music and stages, and solid gameplay. That's all you really need to be a good fighting game, those things. And that's not always easier said than done. So with that all being out of the way, who I am, what I like about fighting games, what do I appreciate in fighting games, let's talk about the current very weird state of the big fighting games. I'm not going to go over every fighting game. I'm not the biggest like Under Night in Birth guy, but I want to talk about some of the heavy hitters relatively quickly. It's not going to be quick. I like to drone on, but just kind of go through where they are right now at the end of February 2026, the road they have come down, and where I hope they're going. So without further ado, let's start with the biggest boy in the room, as previously mentioned. That is Street Fighter 6, released in June 2023. 2.5 years, almost 3 years now, guys. Very quickly, Street Fighter 4 was a massive success, kind of turned the whole thing around back in 2009 on consoles. Street Fighter 5 came out in 2016, and everyone hated it because it had barely functioning online, 16 characters at launch. Street Fighter 4 had 25 at launch, and no single player content whatsoever. There was no arcade mode. That has to be like the only fighting game like MSRP that you pay MSRP price for at $60 that I played that did not have an arcade mode at launch. That came later. That was that was not acceptable. That game eventually somewhat redeemed itself with a steady slew of DLC characters and balance changes, but it never shook off the stank of that original launch. And the gameplay was good, but it was never to the heights of Street Fighter 3, 4, Alpha, what have you. Street Fighter 6 looked to really remedy this, and I've done an unboxing, I've talked about this. I think the launch of this game was fantastic. Right off the bat, visually, great. The characters that were coming back, some of them had radically new and fantastic designs, like my girl Cammy here, one of the best redesigns of a character I've ever seen. But characters such as Ken, Hoboken, as he is known, with kind of being out in the streets now, looks great. Ryu being older with the beard and the Goken shawl. Many of the returning characters had a unique look to them, and the whole style of the game kind of being more pseudo-realistic really looked great. They only launched with 18 characters, which was still too small. However, we were looking forward to a character release schedule as we did in Street Fighter V. And then, of course, they heard the complaints about Street Fighter V's lack of single-player modes, so they put in an entire world tour mode, an explorable Metro City from Final Fight and Street Fighter with a fairly lengthy and in-depth story mode. Now, you don't play as any of the Street Fighter characters. You play as your creative fighter, your avatar as it's known, which there's a lot of customization on design. I know a lot of people have fun with this. Like you can really create your own Street Fighter character and give them moves. And as you play through the World Tour mode, you can unlock moves to assign them from every character from, throughout the series. And there's lots of cool throwbacks in World Tour mode characters and stages that weren't in the main game. And it was a cool addition. Of course, there was now an arcade mode at launch, which I can't believe I'm saying, like, I have to even mention. And along with that, there were tons of unlockables. There were tons of unlockable pieces of artwork, tons and tons of promotional artwork and kind of sketch artwork throughout the series, which was really great, as well as a decent selection of music. Now, and the game, at the end of the day, played fantastically. I think Street Fighter 6 might have the best gameplay in the series, right up there with like Street Fighter 3 in terms of oomph. It feels good when you hit someone. Like, they added kind of a mechanic from every single Street Fighter game. They have, the parry from Street Fighter 3. They have something akin to the Alpha counter from the Alpha games. They have something for pretty much every type of Street Fighter fan. They have something like the drive the drive impact, which is like the focus attack from Street Fighter 4. I think most people were very happy with it, and it had a great stable multiplayer. It still does online. The online on this ran smooth on day one and continues to run smooth to this day. And along with this, they added a lot of other cool extras like unlockable classic Capcom games, which you have to be connected online to play. But like in the certain menu of the game, like the 3D menu, you could play a rotating list of Capcom games. Now, there are some issues with this game. Like I mentioned before, the roster was too small at launch. 18 characters, all right, better than Street Fighter V, but hopefully they release 6 characters a season like they did with Street Fighter V. And just to be clear, with Street Fighter V, a season was not a year. A season was like 8 or 9 months, 8 or 9 months. Basically, you got a character every month and a half to two months for a while in Street Fighter V. And so we were kind of hoping for that cadence with Street Fighter 6, especially with the announcement of how well the game was doing. Capcom is always touting how well this game is doing, how much faster it's selling than Street Fighter V was. Unfortunately, that wasn't the case. And here's my biggest gripe with Street Fighter 6. It is the incredibly slow release of characters, correct? Street Fighter 6's launch roster is Street Fighter 2 characters mostly, and brand new characters. And those characters are hit or miss. I think they're better than a lot of the new characters in prior Street Fighter games. I think characters like Marissa and Jamie are pretty good. I think Luke, the poster boy here, is kind of universally hated as a design, though he plays okay. But this is Jake Paul with Popeye arms. It's a terrible design. But there is a very obvious absence at launch of Street Fighter 3 characters and Street Fighter Alpha characters. Street Fighter 6 story is supposed to take place after Street Fighter 3, the first time in 26 years. So people are kind of looking forward to how these characters are doing. And right now, 2.5 years later, there has been an inclusion of 2 Street Fighter 3 characters. Just Elena and Alex coming soon, the main character of Street Fighter 3. The biggest thing along with that is the slow, and I must emphasize this, slow release of characters throughout Street Fighter 6's lifetime, which is so disappointing. It is for a year, not a season, a calendar year. I think in the first year of Street Fighter V's life, it got 11 or 12 characters. And 14 months after Street Fighter 4's release, we got Super Street Fighter 4 that added 10 characters along with an Ultra for everybody in stages. So it is ludicrously slow in comparison to its predecessors, right? And there are many reasons for that. Let's go over some other things. There is a pseudo-monthly battle pass where you can unlock you can pay some money to get this pass for Street Fighter every month, and you play to unlock minor content. It's usually clothes for your avatar, some music for the game, things of that nature, or a new Capcom classic game. There are good things and bad things about this. It's $5 a month, which is fair, but some of the issues with this is that it's not steady, right? There are months without battle passes, so there'll be months where there isn't a lot to do, and the rewards are not good substitutes for getting characters, right? Because it's all avatar stuff. It's very little stuff that you actually use in arcade mode or anything like that. Also, I don't think that locking music to the battle pass is a good thing. The game has been out for almost 3 years. If you miss certain battle passes, you just don't have that music. You can't buy it anywhere. I have it, but you will never get it. And that kind of just lessens the game, especially when you're playing hundreds of matches. And here's another thing. The default Street Fighter 6 music is not good. Compared to Street Fighter 2, 3, 4, thank God there is a shop where you could purchase a lot of classic music because the default music is very weak. But the fact is, there's tons of it that you may have missed if you pick up the game today. You will not be able to get that music or the classic Capcom games that play on the side if you miss those battle passes, and they have not repeated. They very rarely repeat. 1 or 2 have repeated. And most of the stuff you get is avatar stuff, which you're going to get bored of really quick. So, unfortunately, I feel like a lot of the focus has been going into these battle passes, along with these random collaborations with pop stars from around the world. There was like unlockable skins and colors for pop idol bands in Korea, death metal bands from Europe, Twitch colors. So and with that, not only comes the sacrifice of character release schedules, but also stages and costumes. Street Fighter 6 got some costumes within about 6 months. Every character got a new costume 6 months after release of the game. And then it went a year and a half without getting any more. Street Fighter 5 got costumes constantly, randomly. Every couple weeks you get a new costume, new stage. Not in Street Fighter 6. Costumes come out randomly and are fairly highly priced. Like $6, $7 they average out to. So there's just, what ends up happening is if you play a lot, you're going to see the same things a lot. You're going to see the same characters, the same costumes, the same stages. And that kind of makes the game boring after a while, which that's really kind of contrary to how fun the game is. That's in spite of how fun the base game is. But you need reasons to come back, right? You need a bigger roster. And there's another thing, stages. There's only one stage being released this entire year. So it was 4 characters and 2 stages for the last prior years. Now it's 4 characters and 1 stage. So you're seeing these things over and over again. It's really, I'm sorry, unacceptable. Now I know games are more complicated now. But however, the teams are bigger. The game is constantly touted how big of a success it is. And I'm not saying you need a character a month. That would be unsustainable with everything they're doing. And I must say they're doing a good job with maintaining their, like their online functionality. It always runs pretty smoothly. But they haven't added anything. And they have set a precedent. And this is the important part with Street Fighter 4 and 5, that they would be adding new features and things at a fairly regular cadence. Street Fighter 4 got Super Street Fighter 4 Arcade Edition, Ultra. Street Fighter 5 got Championship Edition and Arcade Edition, and they added super moves and colors and costumes and stages all the time. Now it is a predictable rate of 4 characters, maybe a stage or 2, and maybe a costume every year and a half for some of the characters. And that's just not acceptable. I think, especially with their kind of pacing, right now the most recent character was C. Viper, released in October. We don't get Alex until March. So it's nearly 6 months of just no new content. There's no new balance patches. The game is patched very loosely. And maybe Capcom is being stretched thin with Monster Hunter and Resident Evil, and they're hiring more. But for a game that is constantly touted as such a big success and is so beloved by casuals and competitives, I think its rollout of content has really hindered it. And unfortunately, it's been so long. We're coming up on 3 years. I think it has marred its legacy. If they had released 6 characters a year, not just a season, but like 1 character every other month, I think that would have really made this game something special. There's so many classic characters that just aren't in this. Are you an Alpha fan? Well, your characters aren't in there. You know, if you like Sakura, Cody, Guy, Rose, they're not in this game. Are you a Third Strike fan? Well, you have Elena and Alex soon, but if you like any of the other characters, Makoto, Dudley, Ibuki, what have you, they are not in this game. And unfortunately, I think at the end of the day, we're just going to have a really great game with a limited roster, stage selection, music selection, and costume selection. And I don't know what the legacy of that game will be, but it'll always kind of make me sad that this game could have been the greatest of all time instead of just one of the greatest of all time, which is where I think it will end. Way too early to be saying all this. Watch tomorrow, they announce Super Street Fighter 6 with all this new content. But that's really what I think Street Fighter needs to do, Capcom needs to do. Release a Super Street Fighter 6 with some more characters, costumes, and stages, and live up to the legacy to which you have built yourself. Just make it a little bigger, a little faster. I'm sorry, you got that Resident Evil Monster Hunter money. I know you can do it. But I've rambled on about Street Fighter. But I can't be too harsh on Capcom just because they have been absolutely killing it with their fighting game collections. Yes, since 2022, we've gotten 3 amazing fighting game collections. The first being the Capcom Collection Fighting 1 with Darkstalker games, with like weird picks like Red Earth and Cyberbots. We got Capcom Fighting Collection 2 with the Capcom vs. SNK games on here, along with Power Stone, Project Justice. Very hard to come by games that people never thought would come back. And of course, the most requested collection re-release of all time, Marvel vs. Capcom Fighting Collection, that not only has Marvel vs. Capcom 2, the GOAT, but has the entire series of X-Men, Children of the Atom, and Marvel Superheroes, X-Men vs. Street Fighter, Marvel 1, so on and so forth. And all of these have online and decent online. So along with Street Fighter 6, they've released all these and have good online for all of them and have added bells and whistles to these. So I can't be too mad if Capcom is stretched thin maintaining all of these, because I do think that they've been doing a really good job in preserving their past games, which a lot of companies just don't do. So while I do harp on them for Street Fighter 6, I can't say that they're misallocating everything, because these collections are amazing. You cannot believe the hype of the community and a lot of gamers for the Marvel vs. Capcom fighting game collection. No one thought these games were going to come back. And then only months later to have Power Stone and Capcom vs. MK2. Incredible. And that lets me also kind of say that this is also the age of the guest character crossover, which is great. It brings fans together, makes them check out other games. Street Fighter 6 had the first guest characters in Street Fighter history with Mai Shiranui and Terry Bogard from Fatal Fury, and they fit in like a glove. They have fought, Terry and Mai have been in so many Capcom developed games, have fought Street Fighter characters so many times that they don't even feel like guest characters. They feel like friend characters. They just perfectly fit. So even though the roster is small, those guest characters killed it, and I love seeing that those companies are all kind of like collaborating, and you got things like Capcom vs. SNK coming back. So I gotta say, Street Fighter maybe gets a little boring because of the lack of content sometimes, but then you can go play some of these classics and they're great. So Capcom, good and bad, mostly good. Street Fighter 6, incredible game, don't want to get away from that. Just wish more stuff came out for it, and those collections are great. But what about the next biggest Japanese fighting game? Tekken. Tekken 8 had big shoes to fill. Tekken 7 kind of revived the Tekken franchise after Tekken 6 and Tekken Tag Tournament 2 didn't really hit with audiences for a multitude of reasons. Tekken 8 probably has the best story mode in any fighting game I've ever played. Even if you're only a little bit aware of what the story of the Tekken games is, Kazuya versus Heihachi versus Jin. Like, this story mode was high budget. It is very satisfying. It is crazy and anime and over the top. One of the coolest things ever. And while the launch roster of Tekken 8 is a little bit smaller than Tekken 6 and 7, it's still fairly sizable. And the largest launch roster I can think of a modern fighting game with 32 characters. So that's fantastic. They're also only doing 4 characters a year, but I kind of give them a bit more of a pass because one, they launched with 32 characters. It's going to take Street Fighter 6 4 years to get that many characters. And, they've given us free updates with things like an additional story mode. They throw out a stage every now and then. The stages come out fairly slow too, but they were more and they're more interactive than what most of their competitors do. So like their base game was good. They don't have a big open explorable world like Street Fighter 6, but the basic story mode is just so damn cool that it kind of gets away with it. I also think the new characters in this were a big hit, with Reina being a huge hit, but Azucena and Victor also being very popular. That's rare for new characters to be as accepted as they were. Their first season, this is where their problem kind of comes in. Their DLC isn't amazing. It's kind of characters that I don't think like you should pay for, that were kind of should have been there. Their first season was Eddie Gordo. Come on, Eddie's great, but he should have just been in the game. Then it was Lydia from Tekken 7, one of the last characters added to Tekken 7. She was DLC again, but that's fine. I mean, you know, she's a cool character. If you couldn't put her in the base roster, she deserves a spot. Heihachi was DLC. Kind of spoiling the story of the game. Kind of feels weird to pay separate for Heihachi, but they actually like gave him a cool move list. And their guest character was a flub. I'm sorry. Final Fantasy 16's Clive. Kind of following the shoes of 7's Noctis from Final Fantasy 15. Here's the thing. Final Fantasy 16 is not as big a hit as prior Final Fantasies, even 15. Regardless of how you feel about that game had very little presence. And I'm saying this as a huge Final Fantasy fan. That game did not take off. So like a lot of people like haven't played it, and it's definitely no one's favorite Final Fantasy. It's not a bad game, but like everybody wanted Tifa from Final Fantasy VII, and whether that was possible or not, to get so close yet so far with like a very lame guest character, in my opinion, I think a lot of people were upset with Clive. I don't even like think about it. I know why they did it, but like I think that was a dud, and I thought that game would have a bigger impact on the zeitgeist of gaming than it really did. Say what you will about 15. That game had a huge lead up, and I think it was just generally more liked and definitely sold a lot more than Final Fantasy 16. Season 2 kind of continuing that trend. A lot of people were just like not happy with it was characters being resold from who were DLC in Tekken 7 being DLC in Tekken 8 with Anna Williams and Fakram Ram and Armor King. There was a new character, Mari Zoe, which she looks cool, but I don't think that really turned things around. Around this time in Season 2, there was a horrendous balance patch. Now, I'm not good enough at Tekken to kind of give you all the ins and outs of it. I just play the games with my buddies and push buttons. But I know that the competitive scene was very vocal about how much they hated the Season 2 changes. And I know that it has taken a full year to kind of right that wrong and turn that ship around. And from my understanding, it's almost better now. It's not quite there, but there's a lot of work and talking going around Tekken 8's rebalancing. Unfortunately, the head of the company, or of Tekken really, Harada, resigned, and people are a little worried about who's going to steer the ship now. Season 3 looks to be a bit of an improvement with characters, kind of more weird characters coming back, like Roger, the kangaroo, and Bob, and that's and mystery characters still yet to be revealed. So we'll see how that all kind of turns out going forward. Tekken 8, I hope, does succeed. It's a beautiful game. I have a lot of fun pushing buttons with it. And with the death of Soul Calibur, its sister series, which was my favorite 3D fighter, one of my favorite series of all time, a lot more rides on Tekken. So I do hope that it continues to turn it around and become as well loved, because Tekken 7, I think, was the highest selling game of the series. I hope Tekken 8 one day can right the wrongs of its balance patches. I think the game is selling well amongst casual fans, but I would just like it to be well liked and maybe get some cooler guest characters. I really want cooler guest characters. Tekken 7 had Geese Howard, Akuma, Noctis, and Negan from Walking Dead. We need weird and cool guest characters like that. But Tekken 8 keeps righting that wrong. Strong launch. Let's hope the DLC of Season 3 stacks up. Which brings me to the largest American fighting game, Mortal Kombat. Okay, guys, this game didn't do great. Mortal Kombat always sells really higher than most other fighting games due to its casual appeal. Competitively, Mortal Kombat is not in the same league as these games. This will probably make a lot of people's blood come to a boil, but like the competitive scene for Mortal Kombat is way smaller than the other games. Like Mortal Kombat is seen as more of a casual friendly game. It's fun which I love. I'm not disrespecting it. It sells. It makes more money than the others. It's meant to gut you in there, punch your buddies around, get some blood. And if you want to get into the nitty gritty, that exists. That's definitely there. And I've always been a fan of many of the Mortal Kombat games, but with this one in particular, they did some things right and they did a lot wrong. And a 22-character starting roster, this came out right after Street Fighter 6, had a bigger starting roster. They did do 6 a season, so this game got a lot of characters and content. very quickly with some interesting guest characters that I don't think were slam dunks, but as a whole were pretty interesting characters like Homelander from The Boys and Omni-Man from Invincible, John Cena, Peacemaker, the John Cena character, the T-1000 from Terminator, and Conan the Barbarian, the Arnold Schwarzenegger version, as well as the Scream Killer, the Ghostface Killer. So like they released a lot of characters and a lot of guest characters within a year and a half. There was like 12 characters within a year and a half. Cannot fault them. That is a rare thing with Street Fighter and Tekken only doing 4 an entire year. Mortal Kombat got like 12. Unfortunately, this game did not sell as well as previous Mortal Kombats. There was a lot of bugs. There was very little focus on online features. Like you couldn't make like lobbies, and there was weird stuff like if you were at first like where if you were player 1 and player 2 picked the same character, player 1 like was still stronger, like did more damage. Like it was weird. Things that needed to be patched post-launch. This game needed some more time in the oven, it felt like. The story mode was good, but it was like the third reboot of Mortal Kombat, and it was like a rearrangement of the universe. Some of the new designs really hit, some of them really didn't. I don't think a lot of people were really happy with like what characters like Raiden were turned into. Though the characters like Melina may be more positive, but I don't think people really liked what happened to Scorpion and Smoke. So like there was story reasons, because Mortal Kombat is a game that focuses very heavy on story, that people did not like this, as well as some gameplay things like I said, and the DLC was also very, very expensive, kind of owing to this series being owned by WB Games, a very greedy company. It kind of felt like WB forced NetherRealm developers to make this game fast and overcharge for things, which led to the second season of DLC not selling very well, which led to this game kind of getting its life cut short at a year and a half. Now, most NetherRealm games have a 1.5 to 2 year lifespan, but there were promises that this would go on a little bit longer. It was, you got the feeling that's just too short now, that people weren't ready to move on. There was supposed to be more content. But the word is, the WB Games is kind of selling everything off. They're not happy with their game division. They're not making money because of their terrible business practices. And unfortunately, that also not only bled into this, but the Mortal Kombat Legacy Collection, which I do not have on desk here, which was a collection of many, many classic Mortal Kombats with many, many of its ports, like Mortal Kombat 1, 2, and 3 on arcades, Genesis, Super Nintendo, what have you, PlayStation for Mortal Kombat Trilogy. That game had many online problems, input delay, things that would obviously be fixed if they had a little bit more time to cook, and that really hampered that game's launch, and I'm sure it didn't sell what it was supposed to sell. So Mortal Kombat is in kind of a tenuous place, right? I'm sure they'll make more Mortal Kombats, but maybe at a reduced scale with two kind of like tenuous releases, which is really sad because the series has been around for 30 years and I'd like to see it do well. And it did do a lot of stuff good. Like I said, decent sized launch roster, beautiful looking game, always great, more of a realistic than a stylized look, and a decent release of DLC characters to keep you interested. But Mortal Kombat's in a tough spot now, and we'll see where that all goes. It's actually not at EVO this year. There's no Mortal Kombat on the main stage of EVO, which is kind of a sign of the game's low competitive health as well. And that kind of like, those were the big three. It was always like Street Fighter, Tekken, Mortal Kombat, and the competitive scene and like the mind share. But one that's kind of taken Mortal Kombat's place is Guilty Gear. Yeah, one of the most niche of fight, like what they would now call anime fighters on the PS2 in that era, original Xbox. Guilty Gear has steadily grown throughout the years, and in 2021, we got the release of Guilty Gear Strive. Now, I initially wasn't a huge fan of Guilty Gear Strive for a lot of reasons. They completely overhauled the gameplay of the games. They slowed it down. They made it more damage heavy, less combo heavy. And I just couldn't jive with Guilty Gear Strive for quite a while. It was a 15-character roster, which is small, but Guilty Gear isn't known for its huge roster. And it's also a very diverse roster, so it kind of gets a pass in my book and a lot of people's books. But this game persisted, and now it has a huge roster, 32, 33 characters, and it's continuing to get updates. And the gameplay has been refined and updated and balanced. And there's been so many patches and additions, stages, additional story modes. This game has really grown from a decent but not entirely loved version of Guilty Gear to a huge, fantastic game that I think is one of the best in the series at this point. No, I don't think it quite lives up to the gameplay of something like Accent Core, but it's close enough now where it's like it's unique but still Guilty Gear. They've added a lot of stuff back. Many of the old characters are back. And there's a sick guest character with Lucy from Cyberpunk Edge Runners, the anime that saved Cyberpunk 2077, one of the most popular anime characters around. It threw her in, and she fits fantastically. And this game is going to get an update soon with more characters like Guilty Gear Strive 2.0. So this game is still rocking, still doing well, and it has a very strong competitive scene these days. So it has made Guilty Gear bigger than it ever has been, and it has been wonderful to see it grow and kind of like get a ton of popularity. So, but that series, as you know, is made by Arc System Works, which has another game kind of on the back burner for the last couple of years, Dragon Ball FighterZ, which came out in 2018, sold over like 10 million copies. And here, I'm going to say something kind of controversial, guys. All other Dragon Ball fighting games aren't that good. Despite childhood nostalgia, the Budokai Tenkaichi games are not like good competitive fighting games. Fun and all, but that they're just not. However, Arc System Works took the Dragon Ball IP, made it a pseudo Marvel vs. Capcom game, continuously updated it with a steady release of characters over the years, balance patches, gameplay changes, and turned this into an immense fighting game that people still play. They're still making other like Dragon Ball, the Dragon Ball license is still getting other 3D fighting games and action games. But as they die, this game continues to persist. We're getting a new character this year. After a couple years of not getting more content, we're still getting like a new character and update in 2026 for this game that came out in 2018. So you can only imagine that it's still doing well. There's still a passionate fan base and development phase. Like this kind of crosses two things where it is not only a great Dragon Ball game, it is a great Dragon Ball fighting game, legitimately. And I'm glad to see it grow. I think this was one of the only games to ever get more attendance players than Street Fighter at EVO at one point. And while obviously a lot of it has died down with the game's age, it is still a popular game and shows that Arc System Works knows how to make a license. With that, with big talking about companies, we got to talk about SNK. SNK has put out a number of fighting games over the last couple of years. 2019 Samurai Showdown, which had some great guest characters, some lame ones too, like the Warden from For Honor, but characters like Baiken, great visual style, kind of revived SNK as a mindshare. Really can't say enough good things about this. Didn't have great online, but still a really fun game with beautiful visuals and a good roster. King of Fighters 15 coming out in 2022, I want to say, which huge roster at the end of the day with this, 63 characters, not a ton of stages or other updates or amazing online. But pretty much if you liked any of the characters in this franchise, they all were kind of in this. But this game was kind of overlooked. It came out at a weird time. I think it came out the same week as even though they're different genres, it came out the same week as Elden Ring and Horizon Zero Dawn 2, like Forbidden West, which maybe that swallowed some of the audience. I don't know. But the game really wasn't talked about too much. I think people were generally happy with it. It didn't look amazing, but it looked good enough. And that leads me to the most recent game in that vein, Fatal Fury City of the Wolves, or Garo 2 as I would know it. This came out in April, okay? And this game has one of the most interesting developments of all time. If you don't know, Fatal Fury, the last Fatal Fury, Garo 1, Mark of the Wolves, came out in 1999 and was a very beloved but very niche fighting game with amazing gameplay, kind of competitive to Street Fighter Third Strike, and heavily relied on its story, its characters. We never thought that it would ever get revisited, but like it said right here, 26 years later, we got an answer. We got an announcement of Fatal Fury 2. Now, this game had a long lead up. I think it was announced in 2023 and it didn't get released till 2025. Maybe it was even announced in 2022. I gotta look back. But with that, the lead up to this game is very hype, and then it was very not hype. There was a couple things that really turned people off. And just to say as a general note, you guys will never hear my political opinions on anything. I'm not a very political person at all, and you do not come here to hear a guy who collects video games and randomly talks on YouTube with any type of geopolitical. You don't come to hear me say any geopolitical nonsense. But an evil Saudi company kind of owns SNK, right? These games are kind of backed by blood money. There's a lot of evil companies out there, but it's very prevalent with SNK. They have full ownership. There's some Saudi prince that owns SNK, right? And his whatever dealings went on behind the scenes there, this game had really weird marketing. A huge budget went into the marketing of this game, and it came out in the weirdest places. This game was marketed at WrestleMania 41 WWE, in the center of the ring. There was a Fatal Fury logo. That has to do with the fact that the same Saudi company is heavily invested with WWE, so they kind of merged that, and it was bizarre. But this is a niche fighting game, and 99% of the audience didn't know what they were looking at. They were putting the rev gauge from this game, the health bars, on the wrestlers during their walk-ins, and it was all Fatal Fury themed. And I'm like, that isn't the right place for that. And then they had like influencers doing very bizarre trailers, like IShowSpeed and people I don't know who they are, but like big influencers kind of do stuff for this game. Like, it wasn't the audience to reach for, and it added a very weird vibe around this game. Not only that, the biggest blows were, there was two, was with character announcements. Okay, so this game's visual style, just to say first, is kind of like an upgraded version of KOF 15, which took a minute to get used to. I don't think people were initially blown away or impressed with the visual style because they were maybe hoping for a pixel art game. We're never getting one again. But it kind of grew, I think, not only on myself, but on a lot of people. But it was not like the most high budget game. All these games are middle budget games, and I think there's a benefit to that, which I'll get to later. But these two blows I kind of came to, that I'm speaking about, were two character reveals that were announced right before the game launched. Number one was Cristiano Ronaldo, the world famous soccer player. They had an announcement that he was going to be involved in the game somehow. We thought maybe an announcer or a soccer stage, because SNK is very big in South America and in the Middle East, where soccer is a huge sport. So I'm like, okay, we all thought like whatever, there'll be like Ronaldo announcer stage or whatever, he'll be an NPC. No, he is an entirely unique playable character in the game. It is just him. It is not Ronaldo's likeness on another character like Jeffrey Dean Morgan as Negan in Tekken 7. Like, it is the soccer player Ronaldo in this fighting game with energy ball moves. Like, he summons an energy soccer ball and just fights with Terry Bogard and Geese Howard. And it was bizarre, and I don't think it was very well liked, but it could be seen as very funny. But Garo is a game with a limited roster, so it kind of was seen as like a roster slot being taken up. But like, we were all kind of confused, but then you remember that Ronaldo's team was also kind of owned for a time by this same Saudi prince. As this game was being developed, Ronaldo's team was funded by this Saudi company, and right as the game released, I think they dropped the team was dropped, or like they changed owners, I think. So that was funny. But like, that's why it happened. But okay, whatever. One character, random human character in the game. No, this is when the next series blow came. The announcement of Swedish Bosnian DJ Salvatore Ganacci, a pseudo famous like YouTube DJ or like traveling DJ, was announced yet again as a full playable character. Now, Ronaldo's probably the most famous athlete in the world, at least parts of the world. This guy, no one knew. I think someone pointed out like Ronaldo had like 4 billion followers. This guy, Ganacci, had like 400,000 or something like that. Or like Ronaldo had 1 billion, this guy had like 400,000. And it really felt like they were just pushing garbage into this game, like with these characters. Yet again, this DJ had a close association and ties with this Saudi company, with this Saudi prince that owns SNK, and it just hurt the vibe of the game, right? Because Fatal Fury, very Japanese, very niche, very like fan-driven, kind of nerdy fighting game. Like, nerdy is in the sense that like people are really into this, and to see two real-life characters unassociated with the story crammed in there for wide appeal and business reasons, it didn't feel good. It didn't feel good at all. And I think with their announcement coming only a few months before the game released, it really hurt it. And I was hyped. This game came out in April 2025. I actually played it in July 2024 at EVO early, and I was very impressed with the gameplay. I had a lot of fun. But I remember the vibe of what those character announcements did. However, when the game launched in April 2025, it launched with 17 characters, small, but Garo itself only had like 14, 15 characters. And its first season of DLC, and I love this, would be absolutely free. It was 5 characters, not 4, 5 characters, and they would be series mainstays, Andy Bogart, Joe Higashi, an Art of Fighting character, Mr. Big, and 2 big ones, 2 guest characters, Ken Masters and Chun-Li from Street Fighter, kind of showing the partnership between Capcom and SNK. They gave Mai and Terry to Street Fighter, now Capcom gives Ken and Chun-Li to SNK, and they fit like a glove. And it would all be absolutely free. I think to this day, whenever you buy this game, it would be free. So really, you got 22 characters when you bought this game. And they came out at an astonishingly fast clip. Their dates were announced throughout the year, But they all came out early. Every single one of these characters was out by December. The game came out in April, and we had 5 new characters along with stages and single-player content additions very fast, basically at a month and a half. It was fantastic, right? And the game itself plays great. Feels good to hit people. The characters' representations are great. The visual style really grew on me. It's kind of like a comic-y Marvel vs. Capcom 3 style, and the initial impression of this game may be that it was King of Fighter with less characters and no teams. And yeah, there's some truth in that, because definitely King of Fighters 15 is the skeleton of this game. Like, they share the same skeleton. But this game plays so much better. There's so much better. The stages are so much better. The single-player content is so much more expansive. So within the first year, I really ended up loving this game. This game has one of my favorite versions of Ken in it. But, when December rolled around and that 5th character came out, it's like, all right, what's next for Fatal Fury, right? I would say that by the end of it, the stink of Ronaldo and Gennacci started to come away. But just in these prior weeks, they dropped some huge news. The huge news being that they were going to do another season starting like right away. The final character, Mr. Big, dropped in December. In January, new season, new character. And that there were going to be 6. And they were going to be coming out every other month up until June. I'm sorry, every month until June. Monthly characters until June. 6 characters, each with a stage. And they were incredible picks, too. It was Jae Hoon, a character from the first game, coming back. It was Geese Howard, who was an unplayable boss in this game originally, but he's becoming playable, along with Blue Mary, a fan favorite, Wolfgang Krauser, a boss from the past, along with 2 other characters unannounced that have heavily rumored to be Mr. Karate, a character from Art of Fighting, and another guest character, Kenshiro from Fist of the North Star. There was a teaser trailer for Kenshiro from Fist of the North Star. So not only were they good picks, they're coming out fast. They're each coming with stages. And along with that, there's more stuff coming. Like Geese himself isn't coming with a stage this month in February. But on his launch, a new stage is still coming out. We're getting a Street Fighter 3 themed stage for free, along with Street Fighter costumes and music. So like every month we are getting a new character and stage that are cool for 6 months. And the kicker of it all, it's only $20. That is a third of what many of the season passes for fighting games are. Street Fighter for 4 characters without all the bells and whistles is $30. If you want the stage and all that other stuff, it's $50 for 4 characters. Same with Tekken, 4 characters and stages, $40. No. 6 characters, 6 stages in 6 months, $20 for SNK. Now, given this game's fidelity is not as high as those are high budget games. This is more middle budget. But I think that works out because you know what, guys? After a few weeks, you don't care what the game looks like. You just want it to look good, but like it kind of doesn't matter after that initial hook. And I think Fatal Fury is doing it right. To charge that little for that much, that quickly, this game is really surprising me. Now, maybe that's all because of that Saudi blood money. But the fact of the matter is, taken away from that, and I can't, there's no confirmation of that. Taken away from all that, the actual business practices, other than the inclusion of those 2 guest characters in this game, are phenomenal. First season free, fast DLC, regular balance patches, and you know what? Separate from that, SNK, the actual developers, made a hell of a fighting game with really good combat, good oomph, and a good amount of content. So I gotta say, Fatal Fury is doing it right, at least on the content release side and gameplay side. Kind of my favorite going on right now. And those are the big fighting games that are out right now. Now, there's other ones that I didn't talk about that are a little bit smaller, kind of hanging around, like I mentioned, like Under Night and Grand Blue. I'm not quite as familiar with them, but they all seem to be doing well enough to show up at EVO and be fun and be cool. But there are a number of new fighting games that I'm going to talk about right now, and I'll go through these as quick as I can, that are kind of, will they be the future, and like what are my stance on them? So let's jump into it. There's the League of Legends fighter that just dropped a few weeks ago, 2XKL. If you don't know about 2XKL, it was originally started development in 2016 as a League of Legends fighting game, was announced as Project L in 2019, and went through many, many iterations. This company, Riot, the guys who make League of Legends, thinking that they were going to have a huge hit on their hands by making a fighting game because League of Legends is huge competitively. However, this game just released about a month ago now, and it has already been something of a failure for many, many reasons. They just revealed that they had to lay off about half the staff of this game because it did not reach the expectations that the developers or the producers had. So what's up with 2XKL? Number one, the idea isn't fantastic, right? This is just an opinion, but I think I think this is hard to kind of escape the sentiment out there. League of Legends is kind of insular from the rest of the gaming world. Like, let's just say you go to IGN or GameSpot or Destructoid, whatever, for your news. There usually isn't a lot of overlap with like League of Legends news. It's kind of its own world. League of Legends players, from my interaction and like kind of what's been shown, they play League of Legends and nothing else. You don't casually play League of Legends basic, like some people do, but you know, it's kind of separate from the rest of the gaming world, and it's its own genre, like that MOBA kind of genre. The idea that not only would MOBA players stop playing League to play a League fighting game, like that's ridiculous. That didn't happen. That was never going to happen. That's an entire genre shift, right? It's kind of like if Street Fighter put out a first-person shooter. Maybe I would check it out as a huge fan, but I'm not going to play that game for long. I don't think it's a good idea. I'm not stopping playing Street Fighter to also go play that game regular. It's just not happening because I go to those characters to be in fighting games, to play fighting games. So the very premise was a little strange. The other big thing, the game took forever to come out. It was first announced in 2019. It was fully playable when I went to E3 in 2024, and it only came out in January 2026. And here's the other thing, the marketing. The game was called 2XKL. Stupid idea. If that was called League of Legends Fighters, whatever, like Dragon Ball Fighters, probably would have gotten more heads turned. No one, you look at that title, you don't know what it is unless you're in the know, unless you're in the fighting game community or maybe the League of Legends community. If it was called something different, because League of Legends has a very large fan base of competitive and casual players, if that maybe don't check other gaming news, if you just had something called The Fight, like League of Legends Fighter, probably would have turned more eyes. The next thing is the marketing otherwise is that no one knew this game came out. So many comments were like, oh, 2XKL's out? I thought it was still in development. Because it came out a little earlier for PC, and then it came out in consoles, but there's no physical release, this, that, and the third. A lot of people didn't even know that it was finally officially out because it was coming out forever. And the next thing is the roster. Now, they promised a fairly steady release of characters going forward, but this is a tag game, 2-on-2. And it launched with 11 fighters. And you don't get them all at launch. It's a free-to-play game. So you are seeing a huge amount of the roster every fight. You're going to be seeing the same thing, same characters over and over and over. And that gets people bored very quickly. But that doesn't even matter with the biggest thing. The character, the costumes, the cosmetics of this game are insultingly priced. You can get the game for free. And I think the character is like $10, $12 to unlock. Fine. That's too much. Sure. Whatever. You got to make your money. The costumes average at like $28 per costume. There are $100 costume packs for 3 costumes. It is insulting. Now, maybe in the League of Legends world, that thing can fly, or the Marvel Legends worlds, that can fly. But not in the fighting game scene. We're really used to playing anywhere from $5, maybe $7, $8 for costumes. No one's going to do that. And I think that's where they needed the money to kind of go to continue development at the level they wanted to. So obviously their first season of content will probably continue as planned because that was planned before the game. But that game is already kind of crashing and burning. There's not a lot of people talking about it. It wasn't a good idea at the start, if you ask me. And I think it was just marketed and developed kind of terribly. So despite the quality of the game, because the game is quality, does have good gameplay, there's just not a lot to it that you can just play at a reasonable price. And that's a shame because I'm sure there's a lot of work that went into that game, and I feel bad for the developers who lost their jobs months after the project that they worked on for years, after it launched, right? So and just that news that they lost half their devs, everybody who hasn't played it already go, why even bother? It's already dying. It must not be good. That hurts it even more. So 2XKL, I don't see having long legs. I hate to say it. But with that, you also have Marvel Tokon coming out soon from the developers of Guilty Gear, and this is another weird one. It's like half of what you wanted. Everybody wants a new Marvel vs. Capcom high-speed tag fighter. No, that's not what you're getting. Well, you're getting half of it. You're getting Marvel characters in a high-speed tag fighter, not developed by Capcom, but by the Guilty Gear guys. There's been some betas for this, and this game looks fantastic. Some of the anime designs of the Marvel characters are very appealing. The 2 betas did not go over super well. Things of the game being kind of boring were kind of out there. And not only that, it was kind of promised. It was straight up promised as a 4v4 fighting game, it is not really, it's not what people wanted. Yes, you can compose a team of 4, but there's like chores that you need to do in game in order to switch. I think people really just wanted to be able to push 2 buttons together like in Marvel and swap between 4 characters for all the mayhem that could cause. And that's not really what it is. I don't know all the ins and outs of it off the top of my head at the moment. From just what I've seen, from what I've read, I haven't had a chance to play those betas, but I do know it is not a true 4v4 tag game in the sense that people are used to. The roster is launching at 20, which is a little small yet again for a game, because when you see a high-speed game like that, you want a Marvel vs. Capcom-sized roster. You want at least 30. I mean, Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite, as bad as that one's, had a 30-character roster at launch. This is a Sony-backed game by Arc System Works. You kind of want a bigger, production. Oh, game's more expensive to make, this, that, and the third. This is Marvel, this is Sony, right? They got money. You can do this. I'm sorry. Like, delay the game another 6 months for 10 extra characters so that we don't get bored between the release of the launch and the next character. Because Arc System Works does not release characters quickly, so I cannot see this game growing quick. 20 is a little small for a universe as vast as Marvel. But that comes out later this year, I think around June, and I'm hoping that it ends up being pretty good. But there's a lot of wait and see on that because a lot of things are happening behind the scenes with the devs. Same thing with another tag fighter just announced, Invincible Versus. Okay, Invincible Versus, based on the comic book Invincible, which recently got the Amazon Prime show starting in 2021. This is by some of the developers of the Killer Instinct 2013 team, a fantastic game for the Xbox One. This is a 3v3 tag fighter with characters from Invincible in the vein of Marvel vs. Capcom. Like, it's fast, but it's violent, like almost Mortal Kombat levels of violent. And I got to be honest, guys, this one I think is going to just be a flub. This is another bad idea. I could be totally wrong. I want these to all succeed, but there doesn't seem to be a huge amount of hype for this for many reasons. Number one, the IP. Invincible is cool and all, but the hype of that show really has died down. That show launched in 2021, and it gets a new season every 2 or 3 years, and it's 8 episodes. It's hype again, then it disappears. If this game had launched in or around, near or around the launch of season 1 of the show, which really spiked the popularity of the IP, I think there'd be more eyes on it. But it's just not the case anymore. I feel like everyone who was really into the show probably ran out, bought the comics, read it, finished the story, and is now done with it because the show is just taking way too long to come out. Another thing, the visual style of the game. This is another middle level budget game. It's not like an indie fighter, maybe a little less than SNK. It doesn't look incredible. And maybe that'll, be in the game's favor that it could be developed fairly quickly. More characters can come out, but it's not a gripping style. And with that, the roster, this is the biggest thing, is 18 characters, 3v3 fighter. Yet again, you're seeing a third of the roster every fight if you pick 3 different characters each side. It doesn't have the greatest pool of characters to pull from. If you're familiar with the Invincible IP, Viltrumites are just Supermen, and half of this roster is just Viltrumites. So flying strong guys. There are other superhumans, but it's not the most interesting cast of characters to make a fighting game out of, especially the selection that they're doing. They made a brand new character whose name I keep having to write down, Elemental. There's so few characters that they kind of had to make a new one. I don't know why they did that, which I've spoken with other people because Invincible is from Image Comics, so they could draw Spawn or Savage Dragon. Spawn's been in a ton of fighting games like Mortal Kombat and Soul Calibur. The fact that they're focusing on Invincible really limits the appeal of what this is. And these are talented devs, but the visual style, the roster, the IP, everything about this, and it coming out in April, it's not changing much. I don't have high hopes for this one. And along with that is the Avatar fighting game that's in early development right now, Avatar: The Last Airbender, Aang and Korra. I have heard good early buzz about this. This is another game with some of the Killer Instinct 2013 devs behind it. And from what I've heard, this game is solid. It's a 1v1 game that does not dumb it down. There's motion inputs. I'm not a fan of Avatar: The Last Airbender, really. It was kind of after my time. I was already kind of an adult or late teen when that came out, so I kind of missed it. But it's a strong brand. Avatar fans are ravenous, despite those shows being over. And, there's always I think there's another movie or something coming out. So that game is also kind of middle to low budget. I think that game actually has the potential to have legs over something like Invincible or 2KO. But we have yet to see. That game doesn't come out till the end of the year at the very earliest. And the last 2 games I want to talk about are revivals that are making me very happy. The first one comes from a series that I love so much that very recently got the announcement of this revival after not having a new game in a couple years, and that is Dead or Alive. Yes, you guys, if you've seen my prior Xbox videos, you know I'm a big Dead or Alive fan. And the fact is, Dead or Alive 6 severely underperformed. It had terrible DLC practices, overpriced, $100 costume bundle DLC. It had less characters and stuff than Dead or Alive 5. There was just less and it was like very similar to Dead or Alive 5 with just way less stuff. And if you ask a lot of people, like after Tomonobu Itagaki, the developer of Dead or Alive 1, 2, 3, and 4 left, the vibe of the games kind of changed, and it kind of had, some people didn't get into even 5 with its ridiculous amount of DLC. Like, I didn't get into 5 as much because there's so much DLC, it was hard to keep up with, and you can't get it all now. Like, so I was kind of hoping with 6, I think a lot of people, like, they would kind of focus a bit more. And the game was beautiful. Dead or Alive 6 played really well, and it was great, but it was just like bad practices and not really being a big step over 5 led to this game's very quick death, along with another couple of reasons. And I really did feel like Dead or Alive was just gone, which is sad because this is an OG 3D fighter. I think the first one came out in 96 on PS1, right after, a couple years after Tekken and Virtual Fighter, but still a beloved fighting game franchise. Kind of Xbox's Tekken back in the day when Dead or Alive 3 and 2 Ultimate were exclusive to the OG Xbox. Dead or Alive 4 was a 360 game. I always loved Dead or Alive, as well as its sister series Ninja Gaiden. And fortunately, Tecmo decided to revive the Ninja Gaiden series last year with Ninja Gaiden 2 Black, Ragebound, and Ninja Gaiden 4, all doing well commercially and critically. And maybe because of that, or maybe because of spurred on by the death of Tomonobu Itagaki, the series creator, they recently announced that Dead or Alive 6 was getting a rebrand as Dead or Alive 6 Last Round. Yes, game is getting some type of major update like the prior games did fairly quickly with a big update. I have heard one tremendous negative about Last Round is that they are removing 2 of the DLC characters. Like, they will not be, it's a different game. It's not just like a download patch for Dead or Alive 6. You have to purchase Dead or Alive Last Round. I'm okay with that because it's been so many years. But that the guest characters Kula Diamond and Mai Shiranui are not returning, that really hurts it. So unless they replace them with someone cool or they come later, that'll always be a mark against it. But Dead or Alive 6 Last Round is just the tip of the iceberg, tip of the spear, because they also announced a brand new Dead or Alive game. Whether that's going to be Dead or Alive 7 or whatever, it's going to be Dead or Alive 7. It's awesome that we're getting a brand new Dead or Alive game after 7 years of inactivity. So we're going to get Dead or Alive 6 Last Round, which may or may not be good, but it's just a kind of a shot in the arm for the series. And then we're getting a new Dead or Alive game. And if it follows suit the quality of the Ninja Gaiden revivals, I have a lot of faith in this, and it's really good to see this cast again. And, Hayate, Kasume, Ayane, Ryu Hayabusa, I've loved these characters for years and years, and this is a franchise that deserves another shot. It never made an outright bad game, so I'm glad to see that we have a 3D fighter come back, because it can't just be Tekken. That's boring. And with that, talking Dead or Alive, and Tekken, we're going to be talking about the OG 3D fighter coming back. We are getting a new Virtual Fighter. This is Virtual Fighter 2 on the Saturn, my favorite, like the one I played the most growing up. Virtual Fighter 6, I don't think it's going to be called that. I think it's like it might just be called Virtual Fighter, if I'm not mistaken, has been announced. There's been some trailers over the last year or so. Dead or Alive 5, the most recently released Virtual Fighter 5, the most recently announced Virtual Fighter, has gotten like 4 new versions over the last couple of years. Virtual Fighter 5 has like almost as many versions as Street Fighter 2, and we keep getting them. Since like 2018, there's been like 4 versions of it. And I guess they're doing well enough because they announced a new Virtual Fighter. Hopefully it's 6. And it doesn't look to be a reboot. Looks to be a future entry, and like the visuals they've shown have been great. Virtual Fighter is another game series that has never made a bad game. It just never made a big impact here in the West. It's a lot bigger in Japan, and it's a beloved Sega franchise. So I'm super happy to see that it's coming back and that it's looking good. But we have to wait and see, because this probably isn't even coming out this year. It's probably coming out in 2027, maybe even 2028. But that is it with games to look forward to. And God, I don't know how long this video has gone, but I think I got everything off my chest. What I want to say, I guess, after all of that, is that fighting games, regardless of a number of qualms with every game, are in a really good place. There are so many options for you as a existing fan or a fan who wants to get into it to go. Whatever franchise I just mentioned, they're all in a good spot. And yes, as just the industry goes on, DLC practices are weird and expensive and can really hurt the game. But at the end of the day, are you going to have fun if you pick up any of these games? If you pick up Street Fighter 6 or Tekken 8 or Guilty Gear or Mortal Kombat 1, the answer is yes. Garo, King of Fighters, every one of these games, in collections especially, is of quality. And that's a rare thing. And it's been going on for quite a while. It's kind of hard to say when this fighting game renaissance, this platinum age kind of began. You could say 2019 with Samurai Showdown. You could say 2022 with King of Fighters 15. Hell, you could say Guilty Gear Strive with 2021. But the 2020s have been very, very good for fighting games. They're all getting a good amount of budget. We're getting some revivals. We have a lot of new games. In fact, it's kind of scary. Like, we're going to have too many soon, so the audience is probably going to be spread thin if it doesn't grow. And it all may collapse like it did back in the early 2010s. But that hasn't happened yet. And I implore you, if you're interested in getting into fighting games, this is what I would do. I would say, look at the games, watch a YouTube video. If the game looks cool, if the visual style is up your alley, that's one hook that should get you. And number two, if the characters just look cool, you're like, who should I pick? How should I play? The one you think is cool, and then go from there. That's all it is. Don't worry about the mechanics. Don't worry about this. You'll get that later. And to be quite honest, unless you're tending to make money at this, it doesn't really matter, because I'll tell you, all modern fighting games play pretty damn good and have a lot of nuance once you get on. They all have that. So if you're like me and you want to be like, I love that series, but I want there to be some meat on their bone, all of these recent releases have that. So go with whatever looks cool. I know that sounds shallow, whatever kind of tickles your fancy. Like, oh, Soul Bad Guy looks cool, I'll be him. Or Cammy looks great, I'm going to get the new Street Fighter. All of them are great picks, I must say. So there are my thoughts. I would say that I am incredibly happy with what's coming out. I wish that some things would change, like I mentioned, with all these games. The DLC practices would be a little bit more steady, a little bit more uniform, a little faster. But I am so happy that so many of these franchises continue to succeed, that old niche titles go up, and that there's room for all of these franchises that were thought dead have been revived, and some of the old greats like Street Fighter and Tekken are still going strong. And with that, guys, I got to thank you so much for listening to me talk. I love fighting games. I could do this for every genre, but my favorite thing to talk about is fighting games. And I want to hear, what are your favorite fighting games? What's the one you're currently playing? What were your favorite growing up? Are you still in it? Have you fallen out? Are you interested in getting back in? Ask questions. I'll try to answer as quickly as I can. That's why I do these videos. I love the discussion. Are you casual? Are you competitive? They're all great. You need it all. I know I said some shit about the competitive scene, but they're great. I go to EVO. I love watching, and you're very much needed. Keep it friendly. Fighting games are good. They're not only are they good right now, it has just always been fun to play. So have a good night, everybody. Go play some fighting games and have a good night.